You know
in
he's
quotes.
capable of beating the shit out of both of us at the same time, right?
Yeah, but not through Twitter.
Yeah,
He can't get me through Twitter.
but he's capable of
Can't.
literally dismembering our bodies with his bare hands.
That doesn't mean that he's right. That doesn't mean that he's right. And I have the courage to tell him on Twitter that he was wrong. This is Justin Lesko, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu brown belt and former pro MMA fighter.
And I'm Mike Callahan, a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu brown belt and a law enforcement officer. Coming up on our show tonight, we're going to be talking about Khabib's surprising retirement and where he ranks in the greatest of all time discussion.
I know there's one John Jones in Albuquerque who really, really, really doesn't think he's the greatest of all time.
Yeah, I lost count after about his 30th tweet.
Also, Khabib totally missed weight before that fight.
That was pretty obvious, but he's DC's teammate, so I know you're going to be overly critical of that.
I will be. And I also think that I have a fix to the weigh-in problem. But first, this episode of the show is brought to you by Crown Rash Guards.
Yeah, if you guys have been following us on Instagram, we've been talking about their products for a little while now.
We were really surprised at how durable these rash guards are, considering how affordable they are.
And I'm sure you guys know normally that if you refer to a rash guard as affordable, you can assume that it means that they're pretty shitty quality, but it's not the case with these things.
Also at crownrashguards.com, you can do something kind of cool where you can bundle an order together.
Yeah, so if you go to their website now, you can save even more money by bundling rash guards, different styles, different sizes, and get an even bigger discount.
Check out crownrashguards.com and make sure at checkout you let them know that we sent you. And now, this is where I always say, welcome to That Jiu Jitsu Podcast.
You didn't comment, like, I was, last week I repped the Sixers because the Doc Rivers and taking strides in the right direction, but now I'm repping the 2020 NFC East champion Philadelphia Eagles.
NFC East champs with 5 wins, I'm sure.
No, I think they're going to turn it around. Your wedding, the night of your wedding, I wasn't planning on getting bombed because the NFC Championship was the next day?
We were at the airport. We flew out the next day. We flew to Ireland the next day.
Yeah, I remember this.
Everyone was standing in the gate and no one would get on the plane because it was like halftime when they were like trying to board the plane. So usually everyone's rushing to get on, and like even though you have an assigned seat, like everyone's rushing to get on. Well, no one would go, and they kept calling like the boarding groups, and no one would get on because we were standing underneath the TV. And then,
right. So fortunately,
I got on the plane, and I was able to watch the rest of the game on the little tiny like 3-inch TV in the seat in front of you.
It drives me nuts when people pull that shit in the airports. Like,
the only reason that I would rush to get on is within my boarding group. So if I'm like boarding group 6, I'm rushing to make sure I get space for my bag because I don't want to check a bag. I never want to check a bag. I'm anti-check a bag.
Yeah.
So if you're the last person on the plane, there might not be overhead space for your...
See, I'm that guy who will walk up and down the plane and like rearrange other people's bags like I'm playing fucking Tetris. You know what I mean? If I'm in row 44 and there's a space for my bag that's not going to fit under my seat, because I very rarely check bags.
I try not to go too many rows away from my seat because then it's inconvenient when, again, at the end of the flight, when the plane lands, everyone stands up despite knowing you're not getting off this thing for at least a half hour.
Where are we going? Right. Where are we going?
Speaking of people who are annoying, Daniel Cormier was really defending Khabib for missing weight. And how's that for a transition?
Yeah, it's not your segues aren't your strong suit. Yeah, but so is.
I'd be surprised if that makes it into the final cut of this show. Let's talk about him retiring first, and then we'll talk about the weight debacle because everyone probably wants to hear more about who's the greatest of all time more than they want to hear about us being mad about a weight cut. But yeah, right up front, I don't think Khabib is the greatest fighter of all time. I think currently he's number 1 pound for pound. And you can be one and not be the other. John Jones is mixing the two up, and he can't accept that he's not the greatest pound for pound right now. He thinks that if you're the pound for pound right now, you're the greatest of all time. I think if you look at the people that Khabib has beat in his last couple fights, beating Dustin Poirier and finishing him, beating Conor McGregor and finishing him, beating Justin Gaethje and finishing him, pound for pound means no one right now, if weight wasn't an issue, can beat Khabib. That's what that means. And I don't think that they can. I think he's the number 1 pound for pound fighter right now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I go back to like outside of the three people that you just named, you'd be hard pressed to find like Michael Johnson, Abel Trillo, like these aren't people like it's a strength of schedule kind of thing.
All right, so that you're following the John Jones argument that John Jones has the better strength of schedule.
Yeah, I mean, but like here's the thing. I think that John Jones, an argument against John Jones is his lack of activity. But Khabib doesn't fight often either. You know what I mean?
Khabib fights like at most twice a year, but usually it's like once a year.
He beat McGregor. He beat McGregor in 2018, and then he fought Poirier in 19. Like he fought once a year for the past 3 years. But I just think that I don't think that you consider him the best of all time.
He's not. I don't think he's the best of all time, but I do think right now, if pound for pound, if weight isn't an issue, Khabib and his talent at any weight class beats who's better pound for pound right now. It's not John. It's not John Jones.
I mean, I always go back. I think John Jones is a total scumbag. And I think he's an asshole. I think he is borderline sociopathic. It's I'm not a big fan of him, but like he is a generational talent. Like his resume.
I agree. And I wish that he never fucking got caught juicing 5 different times because it definitely taints the legacy. It does, I think.
I don't know. I'm more on board with the Khabib pound for pound thing, but like he's retiring. Why are we even putting him on this fucking list? Like he's not an active fighter anymore, you know?
Well, and you know what's kind of fucked up? It's so stupid. The rankings for the UFC, like the way that they do it is they have like media polls and whatever, and then the people who are approved to be in the like delivering the rankings and voting on the rankings. Right. Some of these places are like websites that haven't had a news article in 2+ years. Yeah. Like it's jokers. And if he didn't retire, I almost think they don't put him number 1 pound for pound. But he sort of campaigned for it because they don't. It was his goal to get it. He
and like even what said, the fuck is that?
The argument of strength of schedule for John. I almost buy that argument. Because you look at who he beat, like Shogun and Rampage and DC, obviously.
I mean, dude, he like in all seriousness, let's run through the list just off the top of our heads. Let's not look through it, but let's run through the list of people that he's beat, and not just beat, but fucking dominated.
Well, I already have it written down, so you run through the list, and I'll let you know all the ones you missed.
Okay, so
it's right here on my screen, so I'm going to be cheating.
So he started off like he beat Stephan Bonner. Then he beat what the hell's the Russian dude's name? Not Igor. Is it Igor Volchansky or whatever? No, Vladimir Matyshenko was his name.
Matyshenko, yep.
And then he fought Brandon Vera, and he fucking stopped him. And Brandon Vera, say what you want, is a bad motherfucker. Then he beat Ryan Bader. Then that got him a title shot, and he beat Shogun. Then he beat Rampage. Then he beat Rashad. And he fucking dominated these people.
Beat Chael. I was at that fight.
That was a joke, but
so we talked about this a couple episodes ago. But just pause in your memory game. Remember we talked about a couple episodes about like if Dos Anjos doesn't get hurt and he fights Conor, and maybe we don't get the Floyd fight, and like you know how the timeline can diverge. John Jones beat Chael. Finished him in the first round. But if you remember,
his toe.
In the post-fight interview, he realized his toe was barely hanging on.
Yeah, they would have stopped that fight.
They would have stopped that fight. Chael would have been the light heavyweight champion, and we'd have a very different timeline than we have right now because there's no way a doctor would have let him keep fighting. So, just a small divergence in your list.
Chael, and then Gustafsson. But the first Gustafsson fight was a barn burner. That was, I think, the first time he lost a round. No, because he lost a round to Machida.
You're right.
But then he came back and beat the shit out of Gustafsson. Then DC both times, like, then Thiago Santos, which I didn't really agree with the scoring there, but that was kind of a lackluster performance. So was the Anthony Smith. That was a lackluster performance. No slight against those guys. I'm sure they're both very tough guys, but that wasn't John Jones at his peak performance. And then the last fight against Dominic Reyes,
So I was on board with the John's had a tougher schedule. John's beat these legends until I came across this thing on Twitter, which now I have not gone through every person's record and done the tabulation, but it basically said, assuming this is accurate, which I am, the record of the people that John's beat, like the legends category, Machida, Rampage, DC, Chael, Vitor Belfort, like all those guys, their combined record after fighting John is 38, 32, and 3. So it sort of supports the argument that John was a big benefactor of time and fought these guys towards the falling off of their career.
I don't necessarily.
All these dudes now have all these dudes combined have barely above a 500 record.
Yeah, but there's something to be said about that too. Like, I'm sure if you did that with the majority of champions, it's the case. Like, after guys get the shit kicked out of them like that, like, you don't really see them. It's more unusual to see them, run it all the way back through the division and get another title shot. Like,
yeah, but to lose that many fights to bring the record collectively to almost 500,
I don't know.
And that's including DC, who has won fights since he fought John and has been successful. So I think
it's like MMA
It's
math.
an interesting wrinkle it's an interesting statistic if you're looking at how
I
good
wish
is John beating these legends.
So I was talking to a guy that I work with the other day, and I said the two fights like that I wish we could see are a prime BJ Penn versus Khabib and a prime GSP versus Khabib. I think that Khabib beats BJ. And
I think Khabib just does what GSP did to BJ.
Yeah, and I think that GSP beats him. I think that a prime BJ Penn is my favorite fighter of all time.
Me too, dude. Me too.
A prime BJ Penn, we talk about like tough guys, like just a tough, badass motherfucker, and everybody knew it. Like, here's a guy from, a tiny little fucking town in Hawaii who's a jiu-jitsu guy and just scraps and just beats the fuck out of people. Like, he was the man.
Yeah, and who's going to move up from 155 to 170 and win that belt, and then move to 185 and win that belt, and move to 205. Like, that was his plan, was to win the belt at every single weight. Like,
yeah. It's
baller.
It's a shame. I just feel like he didn't really take training too seriously. Although, I'll tell you what, so the second fight with Edgar, I definitely thought that he lost. But that first fight that took place in Abu Dhabi, it was in 2010 or whatever. Like, I thought he got totally fucked out of that fight.
Me too.
I think Khabib beats him, and I think that Khabib loses to GSP.
If Khabib does not retire, which he did, but if you look at the hypothetical, I don't know. Not only do I not know who would beat him,
nobody.
I don't know how anyone
Nobody.
would. I don't know what strategy anyone could beat him.
You would think, like, he took Gaethje down with ease. Like, with ease. Like, it was who's a Division I wrestler?
Besides Khabib and Gaethje, who's a better wrestler than either of the two?
Michael
of them?
Chandler.
He throws Gaethje around.
Michael Chandler. Possibly. Michael Chandler's a very good wrestler. I think he wrestled at Missouri.
I know he's also an All-American as well, I think, right?
Mm-hmm. But still, it doesn't fucking matter. I told you the story about Ed Ruth last week. Gaethje was a Division I All-American wrestler. Like, my thought was that he was going to be able to keep it on his feet, but, like, it's not even that. Like, fucking Khabib was just walking him down. He was just walking him down, and he was just eating eating whatever he was throwing at him, and it was like, it was crazy. Khabib would continue to get better.
And the way that he took down Gaethje wasn't a pure shot from the
Oh
center.
my God!
It wasn't
in the second
off
round.
that kick. Yeah, the way he. If you didn't see the fight, which I'm sure if you're listening to our show, you at least know what happened. Khabib kept throwing like peppering jabs at Gaethje because Gaethje was throwing the outside leg kick to counter the pepper jabs, and he threw a pepper jab, like just feinted out there. Gaethje responded with a kick that Khabib knew was coming, caught the kick, and took him down off catching the kick. Like the way he combines wrestling for MMA, not just pure wrestling, not just hitting a takedown in the open. It's like
it's GSP.
flawless.
It's just a flawless game plan. He makes you think he's going to take you down, and then he's got like GSP. One of the second fight that St. Pierre had with Koscheck was one of the greatest displays of the use of a jab. Like he broke Koscheck's face with a jab, but you know, if you want to generalize, make a generalization about GSP's style, it was just to keep you off guard. Like you thought you were wrestling, then he was fight or striking with you. The second you thought you were in a boxing match, he would take you down. There was like, I mean, he would take BJ Penn down. Josh Koscheck was a Division I national champion. He took Koscheck down. Like he out wrestled Josh Koscheck. John Fitch was an All-American. Thiago Alves had tremendous takedowns. Like, and all these guys, like he was just dominating. And people would always say he had such a boring style. But it wasn't. It was fascinating how he would just exploit the weaknesses of these guys. And then when they would do something to kind of, try to minimize damage in that category, he would take them down, or he would continue. It was crazy,
When he could just blend everything together. Like everything was like, he had great Muay Thai for MMA.
Yeah.
Because it blended well with his great wrestling that he had for MMA. And Khabib fits in that as well, where he has great wrestling in general, but he also has great wrestling for MMA. And again, I can get the argument for he's the greatest of all time because right now I don't know who or how anyone could beat him. So it's hard to say that type of person isn't the best fighter of all time. I would like to see him fight a few more fights and continue to do it. I mean, we all know it's going to be the same result, but...
And it's not like, I don't think he was ducking fights. Like you're always going to get the argument that he ducked Tony Ferguson, but Tony Ferguson's not beating him. And, it's not his fault at the beginning of his career who they were matching him up with. Anybody who they matched him up with, he would just beat the shit out of, it was just one of those things.
And the argument for a long time when he first got to the UFC was that everyone that he fought before the UFC were cans and were shitty fighters, but I think there's only one fighter, and you can correct me in the comments to this YouTube video if I'm wrong. I think he only fought one guy with a sub 500 record who finished their career, or as of today only is like, so he fought the people you fight when you're first coming up. When your early fights, you're fighting guys who have 500 records or maybe worse or maybe slightly better, but you're not fighting in your first fight a 10-0, 12-0 guy. Like, it's just not how it works.
Yeah, he's he's incredible.
The only thing he's not real great at is making weight.
Nice segue.
And that's a better transition than the one I tried to do earlier.
Nice segue. He did miss weight.
If you didn't see the video, so Khabib gets on the scale, and he looked like shit on the scale. He looked like he had a very rough cut. The guy running the scale sets the weight to 155 when Khabib's on it. Well, that thing was still moving on up, and as soon as it got to 155 and went past and the bar still kept raising up, my man just wiped it away and said, "Yep, you're good." Like, there's no chance he was on 155. He didn't let it settle to see if it was actually on the weight.
Right.
He didn't let it was still, if it's going up, it means you're above the weight that it's set to. And it was going up, and he just wiped it away and said, "You're good."
Yeah, well, and yeah, you're right. You're right about that. The other thing, too, is like, I don't understand this argument that these fucking idiots on his team are making, saying that the scale behind the scenes was good, because everybody who knows anything about like these weigh-ins or or making weight, like that he was obviously overweight by that scale. So now you're telling us that there's a scale backstage that is saying he's on weight, and this is saying that he's off weight. So there's not like it just it doesn't add up. Like he was going to be all like, and it wasn't like it wasn't drastic. Like maybe a pound. He would have made weight. You know what I mean?
He would have made it. He would have had
just
a cut
the way
more,
the speed at which that the scale was going up. He wasn't going to come in at like 160, but he was probably somewhere between 155 and 157. But it's not 155. Like it's not championship weight. And if anybody looks at that, they'll see it.
Well, when you watch the way the guy who was running the scale was moving, he knew what was about to happen. He knew that when Khabib got on the scale, Khabib would be heavy, and he needed to be ready to call it good and slide the slider away as quick as possible to salvage the fight and make Khabib not have to cut anymore. They probably weighed in backstage, and it was 156 or 155 and a half, and they just said, we got this, and they slid it over. And Daniel Cormier is the one who's saying, oh, I saw him on weight at the hotel, and I saw him on weight in the doctor's scale, and he was good. He made weight, and I thought I had a very good reply on Twitter to Daniel Cormier that
he's capable of beating the shit out of both of us at the same time, right?
Yeah, but not through Twitter.
Yeah,
he can't get me through Twitter.
Okay, just so
and he can't pass my guard.
Now I know he can't pass your guard, which he can, but I know that you think that he can't. But he's capable of literally dismembering our bodies with his bare hands. At the same time.
That doesn't mean that he's right.
So
I have the courage to tell him on Twitter that he was wrong.
Daniel Cormier, I think you're a little bit of a no. I'm a fan of DC, but you're wrong here. Comes off kind of douchey because you know you're wrong. But with that being said, Justin doesn't speak for both of us. And if you, if there's some deal that we can kind of reach here where you spare my life, and all I have to do is give you Justin's address, then just let me know.
I definitely don't speak for both of us because he can pass your guard and he can't pass mine.
It's impossible.
And I do like DC. He's a true American who represented this country in the Olympics, but he also cheated on the scale himself, and that's how he can say that, oh, Khabib was totally on weight, because I don't necessarily believe that you think he was on weight, Daniel Cormier, and that he wouldn't be cheating on the scale, because you already cheated on the scale when you weighed in New York and you held onto that towel because you somehow magically lost 3 pounds in less than a minute. When you went backstage and came back out and hung on the towel, you're a cheater too. It's fine. But don't pretend. Don't give me the holier than thou. Khabib would never miss weight. So Khabib retires. In my post UFC 254 video, I came up with the idea first, and then I see everyone copying it now, that you have to do a lightweight tournament, and you got to put Michael Chandler in against Tony Ferguson, because we already have Conor vs. Poirier in January. The 2 winners fight, and that fight is for the belt.
Mm-hmm.
And now I see it all over the interwebs. Everyone's stealing my idea.
I mean, I just think that was common sense. I just like why the fuck are Conor's gonna walk through Poirier again. I'm just ready for Conor McGregor to be done. I'm just sick of.
I mean, you're on record as saying he's a very good fighter.
He's a very good fighter.
You dislike him that much that you want him to be done fighting?
I mean, is it worth it? Like it's so because he's probably gonna win. Right, because Chandler is, I don't know. Chandler might beat Ferguson, but McGregor can beat all 3 of those guys, and then he's gonna go and he's gonna fucking fake retirement, and then he's gonna fight once a year, and it's just whatever happened to active champions,
right?
So
I mean,
fucking Stipe's not fighting until March.
I know.
So.
We obviously have like a pandemic and everything going on, but even pre-pandemic, that we had a lack of active champions, I think. Amanda Nunes is trying to fight in 2 different weight classes. She's going to fight in 2 weight classes more than most of the male champions are going to fight in 1.
Yeah. And she just had a baby. She didn't
deliver the baby.
She didn't birth the baby. Her wife birthed the baby.
Her wife had a baby. Correct. The solution to any of these weigh-in shenanigans or any of this nonsense, how are we still using an analog medical scale in 2020? How is there not a digital scale with a giant display behind the fighter where they stand on it and you can see the weight right there, and there's no human intervention, there's no slide medical scale? How in 2020 is this still how we do things?
Because these are easier to manipulate.
You think that they have manipulation built in by design so people can manipulate it?
No, I'm saying the scales that they use now are easy to manipulate.
Yeah, I'm saying, why do we use scales that are easy to manipulate? You're saying it's a good thing that they can be manipulated?
No, it's coming. It's a financial thing. It's
what?
You're not following me?
Confused. I'm not following.
These scales that they use now are easier to manipulate, so that way they can manipulate them like they fucking did the other day to make people make weight.
I see. Now I'm picking up what you're putting down.
They're easy to manipulate. It's, you saw it the other day. They lose a lot of money if people don't make weight. Especially, when's the last time you saw a championship fight? The flyweight one, but who gives a fuck about Davis and Figueroa or whatever his name is? When's the last time you saw somebody not make weight for a title fight? Who is it? Is it Travis Lutter?
But I take your point. I understand the idea that having a little bit of human error, in air quotes, in there is beneficial in some cases, but if you want a more legitimate approach, just put a fucking digital scale up there and let everyone stand on it with a display, and then there's no questions. I guess fare thee well, Khabib. I wish you were still fighting longer, but
seriously,
you had a good run.
He was getting better and better. He was the reign of dominance was going to continue. He was becoming more and more exciting to watch. But I
usually don't get bummed out when fighters retire, but I'm a little bummed out that he's retiring because I wanted to see this reign continue. But on the flip side, I also hope he doesn't come back in 2 years because then I'm a big believer in once you retire, just retire and be done.
Stay.
But thanks, Khabib.
We bid you adieu. All right, guys, we just want to take a quick minute to talk to you a little bit about our Patreon account. As you know, we've been running it for a couple months now, and we're actually going to be doing a pretty cool giveaway this month.
So anyone who signs up to follow us in the month of November is going to go into a pool, and we're going to pick a name at the end of the month, and we're going to send that person a brand new Always Be Choking gi. You hear me, I've talked about them a couple times. Always Be Choking. They're a veteran-owned company. They do a lot of stuff for charity, and their goal is to put out really good gis for an affordable cost and support the sport. So they're the only gis that I wear. So if you see me in a gi, that's the gi I'm wearing. We're going to send you one. At the end of the month, we'll pull a name. So sign up at patreon.com/thatjujitsupodcast and you'll be automatically entered into the contest. Even if you sign up for the lowest tier at $3, your name goes in. We'll pull one at the end of the month and we'll send you a gi. So now back to the show.
Back to the show.
We have a few things in jiu-jitsu news to talk about. Did you see Gary Tonin is returning to MMA at the end of November?
Mm-hmm.
Like less than a month away, November 20th.
Yeah.
He's fighting Koyami Matsushima is how I'm going to pronounce that.
He's going to end up, he'll end up being the welterweight champion over there or whatever. He could probably fight at 55. He could probably fight at 45.
Yeah. I don't think he has much interest in cutting a ton of weight for MMA, though.
No.
And I don't blame him. Why would you need to? You're fighting guys who you're just going to roll through anyway.
Yeah, he's going to run through everybody over there.
I think this is basically fight this fight, then you fight for the title. I know there was some kind of contract negotiation or whatever. They didn't fight MMA for a little bit of a stretch, but I'm sure that's hammered out now because if you're ONE FC, you fucking want Gary Tonin on your roster. So
and he's making decent money off of jiu-jitsu too. So
he's making more than decent money off of jiu-jitsu, I think.
Yeah.
Did you see that Cyborg got promoted to black belt?
Yeah,
she got her black belt the other day.
She got promoted, by Cabrina?
Yeah, I think just like within the last week, but
Yeah.
I for real, I thought she was a black belt already. Like when it popped up on my news thing, I was like, oh.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought she was a black belt too. But,
Yeah.
it's legit.
I tend to assume that every Brazilian fighter who's one of the best of all time is already a jiu-jitsu black belt, but I guess I should stop that assumption. Speaking of female former champions, did you see Rose Namajunas was doing a little bit of a East Coast jiu-jitsu tour? And she was with the Danaher guys.
Yeah, she was with the Danaher
And she was
guys.
actually with Ryan Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah. She
Dog
was up
Rose.
training with she was up with Danaher, and then I saw just the other day on social media she was with Ryan Hall as well. So she's got pretty good jiu-jitsu for MMA. I mean, she's obviously has that flashy like flying armbar finish from I think it was in Invicta, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing her compete in jiu-jitsu tournaments.
Did you see Grace motherfucking Gundrum?
Dude, she's fucking savage.
She's a world beater.
So good. She's so good. Was she like 19 years old?
She's 18. She just got her black belt like 6 months ago. 10th Planet, Bethlehem. There's a bunch of fucking killers, man. That's where John Blank originally came from.
This is 2 weeks in a row we're talking about 10th Planet Bethlehem. Like, they fucking lighten it up right now. That's what happens when Fight to Win comes to Philly for like 4 straight weeks is you get the best dudes are going to be competing, and the best schools are going to shine because they got guys competing every week.
They're staying 3 extra weeks in November too. Fight to Win. This weekend they have a 3-on-3 tournament happening.
Yeah, they're doing the Subversive thing again. I saw that they had posted like they were looking for people for like a wild card team. But
yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch.
But yeah, Grace Gundrum at 18 years old. It's exciting that she's 18 years old because I'm basically already planning like the next 12 years of watching her just be a fucking savage, like a silent fucking killer on the mat. She's so good, dude. She's so good.
Dude, Patty Fontes is a 3-time no-gi black belt world champion. And this fucking girl submitted her in under 3 minutes and dominated the entire fight.
Yeah. The way she set up that dead orchard was
incredible.
Just like
I was there, dude.
It was so smooth. It was so smooth.
I was going nuts when it happened. I'm like, it was a really good show. It was a really, really good show. And it was not. It was like nice to watch just jiu-jitsu and in person and be surrounded by the jiu-jitsu people. It was good.
So when you went up to Grace Gundrum after a match and said like, "Hey, come on our podcast," was she like super down and into it?
No.
No, you didn't approach her, or no, she was.
No,
not
I
into
didn't
it?
approach her. I'm afraid of her.
Yeah. She might be able to pass our guards.
I don't know. I don't know if we could pass her guard.
Oh, for sure not. For sure not. And then also they had Grace Gundrum also just beat Danielle Kelly, and then Danielle Kelly this weekend fought Roxanne Modafferi at Sub Hunter on Fight Pass.
Yeah.
And she beat Roxanne with a toe hold.
Yeah.
Which first of all, Roxanne as an MMA fighter, she's very good at jiu-jitsu. Like she's obviously an MMA fighter first, but she's got very good jiu-jitsu. But Danielle Kelly also fought her for the 130-pound title. I don't know what she weighed in at. I didn't see it reported, but there's no way Danielle Kelly weighs 130 pounds.
No, but she just fought Grace at like, she probably weighs like 120, 125. I don't know.
I think she's walking around at like 115. I don't know. She looks like a very small person, especially compared to Roxanne, like side by side.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty gangster to go out, hit a toe hold against a much more experienced, much larger opponent in Roxanne Modafferi, who's also one of the coolest people I think in the world. In the sport of MMA, she's like a true character, and she's a pretty cool, like she just is herself. She's just fucking Roxanne. Like she should come on the show. Make it happen, internet.
Make it happen. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with us. The links to our social media are listed below. So go ahead and give those a follow. And also we listed the link to our YouTube page. And if you go there, you can find video versions of all of our episodes. So go ahead and check that out as well.
I'm also going to link below to our Patreon account. We mentioned before we're doing the giveaway, so check that out at patreon.com/thatjujitsupodcast and win yourself a free gi. Patreon.com/thatjujitsupodcast. See you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you later.
Thanks, guys.